Seamless acceptance is here, and mailers all over the country are working to successfully comply with its requirements. We're here to tell you their stories. Welcome to Seamless Success, where we guide you to successful seamless acceptance strategies. Tune in as Jeff People sits down with successful mailers, highlighting their colorful stories to illustrate their winning strategies. Listen to their valuable insights. Discover the right tools and processes they used. Understand best practices and grow your seamless success. Here is your host, Jeff Peoples.
Bill Marsh, welcome to the show and welcome back. Bill, there are so many people that don't realize how much industry experience you had. You've had decades of experience helping hundreds and hundreds of clients go and get better addresses, address hygiene, and all sorts of the postal industry expertise. So we're going to be talking a little bit today about CASS and NCOA. And I was wondering if you could show how does CASS and NCOA, just give a quick overview to some of the listeners.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for inviting me back. Glad to talk about it. It's my passion to get addresses correct, complete, and current. So many years ago, the CASS program started. And what happened was it was a verification that an address that the Postal Service was delivering to was correct and making sure the house number is correct and the apartment. And over the years, DPV supplemented the original CASS because originally they just checked the address range. Now they're checking the exact house and exact apartments for where they deliver mail to. So in order to get CASS to supplement NCOA matching, what happens is they turn around and they do one more thing. After the address is known to be correct and complete, they take the name component and that's presented from data, including if it's a family, they'll take the first name off and they'll just match on the last name and business names. So first you get the address correct and complete, and then you check if it's current, and you do that on either a family basis, an individual basis, or a business basis. And when the change of address is put through, then that's how it knows how to match it.
And DPV, for people that don't know, that acronym is Delivery Point Verification. And NCOA is National Change of Address, and that's something the United States Postal Service manages all the changes, all the moves in the United States, and it's quite significant, a number of moves. And a lot of people don't realize how fast a database deteriorates. If you don't use things like NCOA, our National Change of Address database, you're going to be having troubles with keeping your data up and getting deliverability. So let's talk a little bit more how to configure your CASS settings to get the most for the deliverability.
Right. So this all comes down to the data that's being presented. And even if you're a mail service provider, it's important for you to have the address components in a place you can match. If you don't own the data, there are tools that can take print streams apart and you could still match for CASS and NCOA. So start off, get your address set, and then get your name in definitive fields is the best way to set it. If you have 4 or 5 floating address lines, most software takes a shot of parsing and matching that right, but it's better if you use the postal standards, a thing called Publication 28 from the Postal Service that tells you how you should put your addresses in. And then if you do that and configure it on that basis, you'll get better matching. When you use CASS, there's also some new flags that are available. There's a vacant flag and it's called a no stat flag. What they indicate is that there's no one living in that house or building, and there's no mail been delivered there in the last 60 days. So what happens is you could use those flags to say, well, even though I do not have a move for that address, why is it vacant? There's probably a challenge with that. So in supplementing the change of address process, you use those flags to decide whether you should mail a piece there. So that's some of the things you can do. There's many more things to do, but getting the standard format and then looking at the flags, including your delivery point validation flag, is important.
It's so critical to look at this data because you don't want to mail to a house that's been demolished or is under, such repair, they're not living there. There's all sorts of things that you just got to look into. So, but I think that comes into the next part of the conversation, which is how does the postal mail processing equipment, or MPE, scan the intelligent mail barcodes and keep up to date with all of the other equipment, and how does that deal with delays and accuracy in the addresses?
So this is amazing. And if you ever go to a processing facility to see how fast these machines work, what's happening is they're scanning the whole address block, and they're all taking the data that's in there in conjunction with the IMB, and they're deciding if that address is current. And so it's just amazing how fast they can do that. There's a CASS database below the covers, and there's an NCOA database below the covers. We actually have software that does that came from the machines that run that fast, and we perceive as the fastest in the industry. But what happens is each address is scanned as it's put on that equipment, and with the proper software and databases below the covers, it decides that, oh, that address is not current. And if the customer wants to, the new address is sprayed on during this process, which is going incredibly fast. So you'll see an address that sits on the side of one that's already there already. That's a new address. That's if the customer wants it, because it's not the best envelope picture when you see that. And we'll talk later about a better way to do something like that. So that's what happens on the equipment. And what happens after that is there's a system called PARS, which is Postal Automated Redirection System, which if it decides that it needs a change of address that you haven't done, it will redirect that mail electronically. And so all of this is happening when that mail goes on the machine. And not only do they do that, but they take the IMBs and the pieces, and they make sure it associates with your EDOC to make sure you have no undocumented pieces that have not been paid for. Incredible amount of things, technology of this century that never could have been done last century because the machines didn't run that fast, and data wasn't, big drives that were accessed that fast weren't available. It all works, and it's phenomenal.
Good stuff. And what are the best practices with using NCOA and CASS to do everything from validate addresses and all the rest?
Right. So here's something that is going to apply to both the owners of the data and also to mail service providers. And sometimes service bureaus, a thing called service bureau in the old days, did data manipulation before printing. So some service bureaus or mail service providers may have CASS and NCOA engines on site. So the fact is the most important thing to do is where the address is entered, whether it's a website, an application of a customer, validated point of entry. Yes, the mail service provider might not control that, but they should give that advice as best practice back to the people that provide it. Secondly, you should scrub at least monthly. Many times before the databases came monthly, people did it on a quarterly basis, but so many things change in those interim months that change of addresses are happening every day. And the best practice is to scrub for CASS and NCOA every month your database. Yes, if you're a mail service provider, you might not own the data, but you advise your customer to do it because it's just going to make things better. So the third thing you can do is do just-in-time CASS and NCOA. Mail service providers may have software to do this, and they may get the data, or they may get print streams that they just have to print and mail. So either way, they could scrub at the point or just before they're mailing, because that should be the most current. If they have either a cloud solution or not for CASS and NCOA, and then you could replace the address block with the new one if there's a new address, which is a better technique than letting the postal service spray something on the side or commingler spray something on the side. So that's three. Electronic ACS is part of the creation of the IMB. To me, it absolutely should be done because this is a post-mailing solution. And what happens is, even though NCOA is done and everything looks good, sometimes the knowledge that that person doesn't live there anymore is done after the time of mailing. An address correction service with the proper what's called service type ID and your barcode will get you that electronic data and flow it back to your customer. The mail service provider usually isn't going to own it, but they could use a technique that they could have a buy for and delegate the data and send it back. And that's a service that a mail service provider could offer in conjunction with the printing. So all of those things are excellent techniques for keeping your addresses complete and current, but getting the data back to the source and putting it back in and updating is critical. Some people take it and they mark records that are undeliverable back in their database. That's back for the source, of course. And then comminglers on these sort machines, when they spray a new address in, they can also provide, if the customer asks them to, they can provide the address change back. It's probably cost a little bit more, but it's definitely worth it. You have to get these change of addresses and you have to get them back to the source. And mail service providers should offer that service and probably make a little extra money if they do.
Yeah. And you got to even look at the pieces that come back and make sure that those get entered. Don't just throw that stuff away. It's really critical for keeping your data updated. And how does the Postal Service calculate move update percentages for your scorecard?
All right. Years ago, there was a thing called the Merlin, which was a readability lookup instrument, which basically scanned pieces to decide if you had address changes that applied. It also checked things like if the barcode was right and if everything was right about the piece. But now this is all done on machines. So that's so important, because what happens is the Postal Service, when they see the IMB on the piece, they are going to associate that with EDOC, hopefully proper postage payments presented. And what they're going to do is they're going to take that information and they're going to calculate how many address changes you did not apply in the 95-day period, right? So you have a tolerance to get them in and get it out to the customer and get the data back and get it updated. So any changes that were not applied over that limit are counted every month by the Postal Service and come back in what's called your mailer scorecard, and a percentage is calculated, and any amount of pieces over a 0.5% are charged 8 cents a piece. And that's probably, along with undocumented pieces, the second biggest assessment I see out there on these postage end of month assessments.
Yeah,
that's how they do that. And it's important to know who gave the data that has those address quality changes. And basically it's moves not applied is what the scorecard is looking for.
Everybody wants to have it so that you update your data and get it back in the source, so you don't have to keep updating it and updating it and updating it. That's the key, is to spend that little bit of time up front to get the original address approved as the correct address or improved. So, and what tools are indispensable to track your move update percentages?
All right, so WindowBook has a new tool called IMAP, the Intelligent Mail Assessment Platform, and it at present will marry your scorecard data with the IV scans that tell you that pieces were not updated in an appropriate manner, or the pieces are undocumented. And the greatest thing about the move update standard that you have to meet is that it'll break it down by who owns the mail that's calling these address changes. There's people that are just, their job is just to look at each job and try to figure out if the 30 customers are doing it for, who the culprit was that caused the most move update errors. This tool it's right on the screen. It comes right up, and all you got to do is click, and there you see who the biggest offenders are. You know, maybe you're going to charge them more, or maybe you're going to make a deal with them. But basically, right on the screen, it's going to tell you, oh, it's 0.5%, but half of that was caused by this customer. You go back to them, you talk about the best practices, and you deal with them, and you try to get your overall score down. You're an EDOC submitter to get you under the assessment threshold of 0.5%.
And once they have that data, they can work intelligently with the offenders. Just say, look, guys, one of their customers can basically knock the other customers above the threshold. And that's, it's just really the right thing to do, is to work with them, identify where the problems are, come up with a way to make sure that that provider or that list is cleaned up and make some mutually beneficial solutions to that. So everybody wins. The provider gets a little bit of service revenue. The owner of the data gets a cleaner database. Everybody wins. The Postal Service doesn't have to redirect all this mail. So good. And any last thoughts on things that people should really be knowing about move update and change of address and keeping good hygiene?
Hey, one last thing about the IMAP platform, as you mentioned, is a fantastic tool for that overall summary. But you can also get the detail of the IMB of the pieces that didn't have the change of addresses and provide them back to the owners, which is a simple thing to export. So I just want to mention one last thing about secure destruction and green and secure. Those things are helpful, and they're all about electronic exchange of data, and you're kind of shielded from change of move update assessments if you use those. Basically, the Postal Service destroys the pieces and gets the data back electronically to the customers that ask for it based on the service type ID. We accommodate that in our solutions, and I would suggest using that if it's something that you can be destroyed. Maybe it's a credit card being shipped, then you have to have it returned. You can't do it then, but any kind of important first-class transactional mail, you might be able to do it on that. And wrapping it all up, it's right. Keep the address correct, keep it complete, keep it current, and then you'll have less and less on your scorecard, and most importantly, the mail, your package will get delivered.
Yeah, and most people think, oh, we're saving some money on move update, but the intent behind the mail piece is the really critical thing. Whether it was an offer or getting critical information to people, that's the key. Yeah, you can save money, and that's very good to save money and very good to reduce these things. But the real big savings is when you get the purpose of that mail delivered and you get that higher return. So, well, once again, Bill, fantastic to have you on the show, and look forward to connecting again. So,
sounds great, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Seamless Success. Start elevating your strategies as a mailer and make a big impact on this continuously evolving industry. Like what you've just heard? Want to get more of it? Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rating at podcast.windowbook.com. See you on the next episode.